Hi, my friends. A massive welcome to the Narcissistic Abuse and Trauma Recovery podcast. As always, it's my pleasure to be here helping and supporting you move from post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic growth after narcissistic abuse, because it is possible. I know it seems like an impossible task sometimes when you're in that long, dark tunnel. I know, because I have been there. But let me tell you, if you get intentional about your healing and really work on yourself on a daily basis, like we should all be doing anyway, not just because of narcissistic abuse, I promise you there is a light at the end of that tunnel, that actually beyond all of that, this is the term that we have called post-traumatic growth, growth because of the trauma that you are experiencing now because of the narcissist. So firstly, I just want to say, if you can hear a little kind of almost like a little growl in the background, my dog is asleep just to the corner of me and she is flat out. So she's snoring at the moment. So if you do hear that in the background, it's not my tummy rumbling or anything. It's actually my gorgeous little chalky dog who's had a little trim in the last few days because it's really lovely and warm here in the UK. And she was looking a little bit scraggly. So we've given her a little trim and she's all nice and gorgeous and fluffy and just sleeping beautifully there. So let's hope nobody comes to the door, because otherwise you're going to actually hear her barking as well. Because although she's a little dog, she thinks she's like Simba from The Lion King or even Mufasa as well. So I want to give you another podcast today, really talking to you about breathwork and breathing techniques. So as many of you know, somatic healing is a huge part of my life, literally on a daily basis, where I'll have an ice bath, I meditate, my breathing is so important to me. And actually, breathing is one of our only conscious and unconscious systems of our body. So we are all obviously breathing, and we're not thinking consciously about breathing, but we can think consciously about utilizing our breath work and certain breathing techniques. So I want to give you some tips and tools in this episode of how you can start to look at your own breath work and have some breathing techniques to really help you start to understand the somatic, the embodied state of your body. Because what happens so often when we've experienced narcissistic abuse, we're literally in a dissociative state. And what that means is we've completely numbed out in our body. So we're totally disconnected. We might say things like, I really feel angry. You're not actually feeling anything inside of your body. Our body is doing a wonderful job of protecting us, numbing us out, so we don't actually feel anything, because it would be too painful to feel. And I think this is a really key point to remember here as well, is that our body is always working for us. So however you're feeling right now, which I get it, might be rubbish, okay? I was going to swear then, but I thought better not. And I get it. But let me tell you, however you are feeling right now, that is still your brain and your body working really hard to minimize that pain than something else. It may not feel like it, but again, a lot of the work that I do with my clients and in my groups and communities is, well, okay, if your brain and body thinks this is safer, why? What's the root cause? What's going on? What are the past experiences of why your nervous system thinks you showing up like this is actually safer and less painful than something else? This is why we can't simply talk our way out of healing from trauma. We can't simply expect time to heal. We have to work what we call somatically, so in the body. We have to really look at our nervous system there as well. Now, as a qualified breathwork teacher, and also I've been working my way through the Wim Hof certification as well, breathwork is really important to me. But there's a difference between breath work and breathing techniques. Okay, I'm going to explain to you a little bit about the difference with that, because again, we see online, don't we, so many, breath work techniques. And I want to show you the difference between breath work and breathing techniques, because there are subtle differences and reasons why you should do different ones for different things as well, and why it's really important to do the breathing techniques. And we don't often hear about the breathing techniques. Okay, so again, as I've been going through my training of somatic experiencing, so I'm about to go into my advanced year now, which is such an incredible training, it really, really is, that I'm going to teach you some breathing techniques and some breath work. And there's a difference. And that difference is the root cause. So if we think about breathing techniques, so breathing techniques are really when we are recognizing that we need to shift our nervous system state. So the technique then is to really start to tone what we call our vagus nerve. Now, I know some of you will have heard of what a vagus nerve is, and some of you won't. So the vagus nerve is a huge nerve. It's part of our autonomic nervous system. It runs down the back of our brain stem all the way into our body. And it's literally from the top of our head really into our gut. And there's two particular elements to the vagus nerve. One is called the ventral vagal part of the nerve, and the other is the dorsal vagus part. Okay. Now the ventral vagal is kind of from your diaphragm upwards. So it goes all the way up into your face. It innervates all around to do with your middle ear, your smiling, your expressions, your voice. And this is what we call our ventral vagal part of our autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system. And then we have the dorsal. So the dorsal is really very much our freeze part of our nervous system. It's very much in our gut. It's very much where we're going to shut down and associated with really kind of calming ourselves, but when we're in a freeze response. The ventral is when we are calming, but we're very safe and we are present as well. So there's a real difference. I use my traffic lights of tolerance to demonstrate this. So the red light is what we call the dorsal vagal part, and the green light is the ventral. So both can look very, very similar because you could be kind of quite calm looking in both. But one is a freeze and dissociative state, the red light, the dorsal, and the other is the calm and connected, engaging our social engagement system. Now, when we think of our vagus nerve like this, when we're born and we come into this world, we already have a really robust dorsal vagal part of our nervous system, the freeze, and then our sympathetic as well, the fight flight, which is the yellow light. Okay, so we have our yellow and our red light already really robust within our system. That green light to recognize we're good enough just for who we are. The world is safe. We start to have that co-regulation. We engage in the social engagement system. That all needs to be taught. It doesn't just come naturally to us, and that needs to be taught by our parents and caregivers. So you can imagine if you don't have that, or you only have a semblance of that, you're going to have a really robust fight-flight system, but not necessarily a nice, calm, connected social engagement system part of your nervous system. And that can lead to our breathing changing in anticipation of danger. So as human beings, there's two elements we need to think about when we're in danger. One, when we're in actual danger, because of course we're going to need our nervous system to kick in then. You know, if we're being attacked, we need a fight, flight, freeze response. But when we're talking about narcissistic abuse, very often, and that's not to say all the time, but very often we're not in actual life-threatening danger as such. Yes, I know it doesn't feel good because we're being abused, but actually from a life-threatening danger perspective, it's not like we're being physically attacked, so to speak. Think of an animal in the wild being attacked by a lion, for instance. So whilst it is not nice, we still go as human beings, though, into a fight, flight, freeze response, even though we're not in actual danger. Now, this comes from our neocortex, which is our front part of the brain. We start to add meaning and interpretation to things as we are experiencing them, particularly as a child. You know, as a child, when we're experiencing events or how our parents behave, our friends, our teachers, you know, everybody around us, we need a reason why they are behaving like that. And as children, we're very egocentric. Everything revolves around us. So every single thing that happens, we feel it's because it's a reflection of us. My parents are getting a divorce because I'm unlovable. I'm being abused because I'm worthless. So it all comes down to ourselves. That then becomes our version of danger. So you can imagine if we've interpreted past experiences as a version of danger because it's triggering us to not feel good enough or worthy or important or lovable, that creates a core wound within us, an inner child wound. So anything or anyone as we progress into adulthood that triggers that core wound, we are going to go into a fight, flight, freeze response because it's our version of danger. Okay, I'm just giving you some background on that to help you understand, because very often we kind of feel like with the narcissist, particularly when we've come out maybe of a relationship or we've started to try and set some boundaries, we're still feeling the fight, flight response in our body, yet we're not in any actual danger at any given point as such, but it's because they're triggering our perception about ourselves. I'm not good enough. I'm unworthy. I'm unlovable. I'm not important. That's your version of danger. So although cognitively we know we may be good enough, we're worthy, we're important, we're lovable, we're not in any danger, our nervous system is taking us back to our past experiences. So we're in a fight, flight, freeze response. Now we will breathe very differently in each different trauma response. So for instance, when we're in a fight, flight response, we breathe very, very shallowly. We're kind of up here, and obviously I'm exaggerating that. And again, always think back to what the breathing would be like if we were a wild animal being chased by a lion. So if we're being chased by a lion, we're going to go into a fight flight response because we're going to either need to run away, or if the lion catches us, fight. So we need a lot of energy in our body, a lot of sympathetic energy, which is the fight flight, for us to be able to fight off the predator. So you imagine the narcissist is the predator. So although we might not be walking around breathing like, if we're in a fight flight response, and even when we start to go into freeze, we're not breathing fully into our belly. We're breathing very shallowly up in our chest. So just take a moment right now and just notice your breath. Where are you breathing from? Is your belly moving, or are we just breathing really, really shallowly from the upper chest? I know for me, my shoulders would always be up, my jaw would be clenched, and I'd be breathing very much from the upper chest as well. So just check in, is that you? And if it is, drop your shoulders, unclench your jaw, and then I'm going to give you some breath work techniques to be able to utilize in a moment of how we can start to shift and change all of that. Now, the reason why I was giving you an explanation of our breathing when we are in these trauma responses is there's a number of things that we want to start to look at. So one, for me, breath work is bringing conscious awareness that our breath isn't into the belly and doing breath work to actually then shift and change that. Because if we can slow our breath down and breathe into the belly, what we're telling our nervous system is, hey, we're actually safe, we're actually present. And it really shifts our nervous system state back into a state of presence and ventral vagal, okay? When we're in that fight, flight, and we're breathing literally in our upper chest and not using our belly, it's because our perception of danger is there. It's taking us back to past experiences, and our breathing is as if we're in a trauma response in anticipation of that danger as well. Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. Do you know what? My hay fever, I've had an injection for my hay fever, which has been amazing, but it's been really, really bad here in the UK the last couple of days. So I've got that tickle in my throat. And you know, when you start speaking, I'm thinking, don't cough, Caroline, don't cough. And you're desperately trying not to cough, and you can feel the tears coming up in your eyes. That was me then. But I'm all good now. So apologies for that. You've got your earphones in and you just heard me coughing. So apologies about that. So back to our breathing techniques and breath work. So when we start to recognize, just like you are right now, oh yeah, I am breathing in my upper chest. You're not really having nice, deep breaths into our belly. This is when we are going to start to use breath work. So I'm going to teach you a breath work where we're going to use the 5-2-8. So we're going to inhale through our nose for 5. We're going to hold it for 2, and then we're going to exhale for 8. So we're extending the exhalation by the count of 3. Now, the reason we're doing that is, you imagine if you were being chased by a lion, you'd be like this. You wouldn't be going, you wouldn't be doing that, okay? You'd be breathing shallowly. So by extending our extension of that exhalation by 3 counts, we're basically telling our brain and our body, hey, we're safe, because we wouldn't be able to breathe like that if we weren't, okay? So let's, and the other thing that I would say to do is put your hand on your belly. You can put the other hand on your upper chest as well. And as we're exhaling, I want you to really push your hand out on your belly, okay? So let's do this together just for 3 counts. We're going to breathe in for 5, hold for 2, exhale for 8. And again, don't do this when you're driving, by the way, okay, or operating large machinery. Make sure that you're doing this at home, lying down, sitting comfortably as well, okay? So hand on the top of your chest, 1 hand on your belly, and let's do this just for 3. So breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hold for 2, 1, 2, and then exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5. Push that hand out. 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold for 2. 1, 2. Exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold for 2. 1, 2. And then exhale out, extending that. 8, 7, 6. Push that hand out on your belly. 4, 3, 2, 1. And then just notice any sensations or changes that are happening in your body. So we have consciously there recognized we're breathing shallowly. We're not in the present moment, because that's why we're breathing like that. Our breathing is coming from a trauma response and our perception of danger. And we have brought in a breath work for us to do to bring ourselves back to a state of presence and try and shift us into that green light, into that ventral vagal part of our nervous system. Now, what this isn't doing when we talk about breath work is looking at the root cause of why we're doing it in the first place. So whilst it is shifting our nervous system state in that moment, because we've brought some conscious awareness, breathwork techniques look to start to tone our vagus nerve to get us back where we're not actually having to do things like that in the first place. Okay, so let me say that again. When we talk about breath work versus breathing techniques, breath work is I bring intention and awareness that I'm in a trauma response and I'm breathing shallowly. I'm not breathing fully into my chest. So I am going to do some breath work to really fully expand and open up my chest into my belly, to really get myself back into a sense of presence in that given moment. Now, breath work is great, and you can keep on using breath work when you're bringing awareness to that. But why do I need to keep doing that? This is when we want to start to tone our vagus nerve. So if we know that we are living our life a lot of the time in a trauma response, which I know many of us are when we've experienced narcissistic abuse, okay, our breathing becomes normal for us actually very, very shallowly. Tense jaw, tight shoulders. That becomes our version of normal, almost the breathing, because we're always scanning for danger. We're very hypervigilant because the narcissist is triggering our core wounds of our perception of our past childhood experiences. Remember, the narcissist in your life today is triggering old wounds. They're not the cause of your wounds. They're triggering wounds that were already there, either from narcissistic parent or your perception of certain events and experiences and other people's behavior as a child. And the narcissist is just highlighting all of that and shining a great big spotlight on it, okay? So this is why to heal from the narcissist, it's not actually about the narcissist, it's going back and doing somatic healing from our childhood, okay? And that's why we have to do things like that too. And it's life-changing work, really, really is. So the breath work is, I recognize I'm not in the present moment. I'm going to do some breath work to bring myself back into a sense of presence. But when we do breathing techniques, what we're doing is we're starting to tone the vagus nerve and start to really shift our nervous system states by doing certain breathing techniques. And the one I'm going to teach you today is what we call the VU breath. You may have heard of the VU breath before, you may not. So the VU breath is where we're going to open our mouth just in like a little circle, just almost to the extent when it starts to give. And we're going to make like a foghorn sound noise, okay? So we're going to breathe in, and then on the exhale, we're going to make a VU sound, which is going to sound like a foghorn, and almost it's going to vibrate in our throat, okay? So I'm going to give you an example. So I'm going to breathe in. And we're going to keep going on that VU until we can't VU anymore. And then we would naturally take an inhale, and then we would VU out again. So I'm going to demonstrate this 3 times for you as well. Remember, only do this if you sat down somewhere and you're not driving or doing anything that you shouldn't be doing. Okay, so I'm going to give you 3 examples now, 3 rounds of the VU breath. And I'm going to explain a little bit why this is so, so powerful. VU. Now, the reason why the VU breath is so powerful is really two reasons. One, it's very similar to the breath work in that if you recognize you are in a trauma response, in a fight, flight, freeze or response, you can do the VU breath, because again, we're extending that exhalation. We're going all the way out of that VU, and it's really helping us bring ourselves back into a sense of presence. The difference, though, between doing the VU breath as opposed to just doing, say, the 528 breath work is we are toning the vagus nerve when we do that. So as we hear that vibration, what we are doing is we're actively toning our vagus nerve. So why is it important to tone our vagus nerve? Well, if you think back to our childhood, okay, when we have perceived these people, events, certain situations as a reflection of us, if we don't have somebody there explaining things to us and telling us it's not us, it's not our fault, we're good enough just for who we are, we end up in those states of fight, flight, and freeze a lot longer than we're in that green light, that ventral vagal part of our nervous system. Remember how I said to feel safe and connected in this world, in that green light, in ventral vagal, that needs to be taught. So as we go into adulthood, we're in these relationships with a narcissist, for instance, if we don't have a really robust green light, the ventral vagal part of our nervous system, we need to teach ourselves all of that. And this is where we have like reparenting techniques that start to come into this, but toning the vagus nerve is really part of that as well, that somatic healing side of it. Now, there's many different things you can start to do to tone your vagus nerve. There's lots of things like gargling. For me, I have my ice baths each and every day. But again, I will use breathing techniques and breath work in my day, because if I notice something, I'm going to use some breath work. But ultimately, each and every day, I will utilize breathing techniques like the VU breath. And there's different elements to the VU breath. There's a VU ah, there's a ah, there's different ones, but I'm going to keep it super simple for you on this occasion. So the VU breath, remember, we're inhaling and then we're VU, vibrating in our throat. And this is really good to help tone your vagus nerve. Now, if you did this daily for 30 days, okay, you would really start to notice subtle changes in how well you are able to cope with your emotions in given situations. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be life-changing in just 30 days, but if you committed to do your VU breathing for a couple of minutes in the morning, a couple of minutes in the evening, after 30 days, you're going to notice a subtle change or difference, or you might even notice more than that, in how well you can emotionally cope with the narcissist in your life, okay? So it's worth doing these things. You know, so many of us, I was the same, just hoped that time would make me feel different. It doesn't. The narcissist, remember, is shining a spotlight on wounds that are already there. This is why the power to heal is within us, and we have to have that understanding of our childhood, techniques to use, somatic techniques to be able to utilize with this. And today I wanted to focus on the breath work and breathing techniques. So I want you over the next 30 days, and I'd love to hear how you're getting on if you're doing this as well. If you notice that your shoulders are up, you're breathing up here, do some breath work, do the 528, see the difference then, and you'll start to notice the nervous system shift, okay? And then 2 minutes in the morning, 2 minutes in the evening, do your VU breath to tone the vagus nerve, and let's see after 30 days whether you notice a difference in how well you are able to cope with life's challenges, okay? Because remember, healing from narcissistic abuse has to be intentional. It doesn't just happen. You've got to be intentional. So again, it's all very well listening and watching and reading all of these amazing things and, you know, really recognizing this, but are you actually being intentional in your own healing? Now, this isn't to shame you, because I get sometimes we sabotage our own healing because our nervous system's like, hey, we're kind of safe right now because you're still alive. So I don't want to do anything to jeopardize that because it could be painful and you might feel worse or anything else. So again, there's multi-layers and there's complex issues around all of this. But hopefully this has given you some understanding around breath work versus breathing techniques. So breathing techniques are really getting to the root cause, toning our vagus nerve, helping us shift our nervous system state. So we don't need as much to keep on using the breath work. Now, I love using breath work anyway, so it just brings me into a really deep sense of peace. But for me, the breathing techniques is really where it's at to really help tone that vagus nerve and really start to shift our nervous system states on an ongoing basis as well, some root cause stuff too. So I hope you enjoyed this. I did say I'm going to do more where it's really helping you and giving you practical tools and strategies. Also, I actually did a TikTok and a reel on Instagram. They're on both, so whichever platform you prefer, about releasing some energy associated, so some somatic healing, some induced shaking, to release that sympathetic energy, the fight, flight, charge that we often have in our body, maybe when we're feeling really angry around the narcissist. Go and check that out, either on Instagram, it's a reel, or on TikTok. Make sure you hit the follow button as well, so you don't miss any of my reels or my TikToks as well. And it's just giving you tools and techniques to help you start to heal. Because don't get me wrong, I love having you here. I love having you listen. I love you being there. I love you watching. But you've got to start to be intentional with your own healing as well. You really, really do. And one of the key things as well is don't be alone in any of this. Make sure you come and join my Narcissistic Abuse and Trauma Recovery for Women Facebook group, so you're not on your own in any of this as well. And I'll pop the link in the show notes for you as well, so that you've got that too. So I hope that helps. Let me know how you get on. Look after yourselves. Remember, breath work, breathing techniques, okay? One's root cause, vagus nerve toning. The other one is about bringing intention and awareness to our breath. If we're recognizing that we're not in a state of ventral vagal, a state of presence, okay? Both equally beautiful, both I would be doing on a daily basis as well, because you deserve it. And you do deserve to move from post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic growth. So take care, my friends. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode on the Narcissistic Abuse and Trauma Recovery podcast.